None of us know. Yeah. What about the state? The state's got like
Well, it used to have a petition for a lot of things, and again, I'm gonna sue you.
What about the high school foreclosing? I thought if you started in one, you can't change unless you legitimately move. Are these some of these kids legit moving?
I think they still have that and they try and enforce it, but
Not everybody.
as soon as somebody says, I'm gonna sue you, what do?
Okay, I think that's just a lot of kids.
It's 5:02 on August 16th, 2021. And with that, I will call this meeting of the Hayden Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Shannon, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Corey Anderson. Commissioner Brandon Demus.
Here.
Vice Chair Alan Davis.
I'm present.
Commissioner Mary Howard.
Here.
Chairman Brian Peterson.
I'm here.
Commissioner Ben Prickett.
Here.
Commissioner Sean Taylor.
Here.
Corey is walking in.
I'll wait 1 minute for Corey.
Commissioner Corey Anderson.
Present, friendly. Sorry.
All right, let the record reflect the quorum is present. Everyone rise, hold that flag salute. Mary, you do it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission have a conflict of interest with any agenda item this evening?
No.
Okay, well, the record reflect that. And then we can move on to the consent calendar, which is the next item on the agenda. And I will start by I guess, making some corrections to, or proposing some corrections to the minutes from the meeting. So on page 6 of 8, the last paragraph, or the second to last paragraph from the bottom, it attributed a comment that you made to me, so that's been corrected. And it says, Vice Chair Davis in support with all 7 recommendations to approve. So that's a change we should make, I think, to make it correct. And then on page 7, on the motion for the variance, Commissioner Anderson and myself voted no. And the minutes distributed said that we voted yes. So we changed our votes to no, and the correct account is 4 in favor of the motion, 2 opposed, and 1 absent. So those are changes I would recommend, I do recommend that we make to the meeting minutes. Does anybody have any additions to that or any comments on the consent calendar? Okay, and I will be clear that the consent calendar consists only of the meeting minutes from August 2nd, 2021. So you will want to make a motion. Pardon me? Was that on there as well? I'm sorry, there are two items on the consent calendar, the minutes and on the written decision. Is there a motion on the consent calendar?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the additions discussed concerning or supporting the meeting minutes from August 2nd, and also the approval of written decision PZE 210140.
All right, thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
You need to discuss it? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? That motion will carry. So we'll move on to the next item, which is a public hearing. Case number PZE-21-0165. Donna, you know the drill.
So Chair Peterson, it was pointed out to me at several of the last couple of meetings, both with planning and zoning and with city council, that not everybody in the audience realizes that I work at the city of Hayden. So would you like to introduce me to the audience? No, who I am and where I'm from.
Yes, well, Donna Phillips. Yeah, I guess there's transition in place. Why don't you, would you take over and introduce yourself? Get everything
So
ready.
today I'm the senior planner from the city of Hayden. I'm gonna present an intro to the request, and then the applicant is gonna present on their behalf, and then I'll do a summary of the staff review.
Okay, and you're a senior planner,
I am
soon to be.
Community Development Director.
All right, very good.
So this is the Mabry annexation request, and the reason it has a different name than the previous request is simply because of our tracking system in the software, and so we couldn't figure out how to name it Jackie's Family Trust twice without combining those two properties together. So Jackie Mabry is the trustee of this property for that trust, so that's why we're calling it the Mabry. PZE 210165, and tonight's public hearing. So just as some background to the property, in February of 2020, they had a request to annex. The city council approved that request contingent upon receipt of 3 items, the first one being correspondence from the Coeur d'Alene Airport, and then 2 will serve letters from the water purveyor and the sewer provider. In September 2020, that application was completed and received, and in November of 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission and subsequently the City Council denied the request to annex. Annexation processes do not have an appeal under Idaho state statutes or under Hayden City Code.
Donna, real quick,
Mhm.
the big question I have after reviewing the package this weekend prior to the meeting. Obviously, the request was originally approved and then subsequently denied, and I don't remember off the top of my head, what was the issue? If the 3 contingent conditions were met, or were they not met? That's
They were met. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that instead of an R1 zone, that it have a residential suburban zone.
Okay.
And the City Council effectively denied the request, and so here we are.
Thank you.
So since that time of that situation prior, in November of 2020, the Imagine Hayden plans were beginning their approval processes. So in November 2020, the 2040 comprehensive plan was approved. In January, the 2040 Parks Plan, master plan was approved. Also in January, the 2040 Transportation Strategic Plan, including the Hayden Access Management Policy, the Hayden Bike Ped Policy, and the Hayden Traffic Impact Analysis Guidelines. Those were all approved in the same month. And then in February of 2021, the 2020 Sewer Master Plan and its associated Hayden sewer policies were approved. So in June of 2021, the City Council approved the request to begin the process for annexation. The property is 5 acres, and the request is for single-family residential, and the existing conditions are single-family residence. Just a matter of location, just to kind of show everybody where we're talking about. It's the piece of property that is highlighted in green, and its western boundary is adjacent to the city's, its eastern boundary, excuse me, is adjacent to the city's western boundary of the city. Everywhere that's in pink is City of Hayden, and in yellow is the City of Coeur d'Alene, so it's effectively surrounded by city jurisdictions. So the development team, the owner is Jackie's Family Trust, and as I said earlier, the trustee is Jackie Mabry, and the owner's representative is Connie Kruger in the audience to present. So with that, I will turn it over to Connie.
All right, thank you. I need to ask the commission if anyone's had any ex parte communication with the applicant or the general public regarding this case.
No.
All right, thank you. Ms. Kruger.
Hi, I'm just making sure I understand what window this is pulled up in. It doesn't look like PowerPoint, so I'm
Send
a
PDF.
browser, right? Okay, yep, I did send a PDF. Okay, My name is Connie Kruger, and my address is 1859 North Lakewood Drive, Suite 102, and that's in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And Donna's given you a lot of background on this project. At the time that we made our application, the city was finalizing their new comprehensive plan, and as Donna has pointed out, a series of other plans related to it. There's been a lot of discussion that has taken place with City Council and Planning Commission on the comprehensive plan, different plan densities, those types of things. And so we felt like we were a little bit in the middle of that adoption process and discussion that was ongoing. And as has been mentioned, there wasn't an opportunity to appeal it. And so we've talked to the city about just bringing the application forward now that additional work has been done on that. So that provides a little context of our being here today. And so let me make sure that I know how to, am I rolling down?
I think so.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So we've already covered the owner and the representative. Our proposal today is to annex the property into the city of Hayden with an R1 zone. And a little bit of background information. This is part of the Hayden Lakes irrigated tracts, and if you're familiar with Hayden, much of Hayden is basically part of these original Hayden Lakes irrigated tracts. Lost just a little under 5 acres in size. This is a regional view of the property and a close-up view of the property. So as was mentioned, there is an existing home on the property right now. The City Council had 3 requirements, which were correspondence from the Coeur d'Alene Airport regarding zone designation, will serve letters from the water and sewer purveyors, and then a trip generation letter. And all of that information was provided, and I believe is in your packets today, and I think has also been addressed in the staff report. Under Idaho Code, Idaho Code addresses annexation by cities with legislative intent. And in this, they lay the foundation for annexation by saying that cities of the state should be able to annex lands which are reasonably necessary to assure the orderly development of the cities. And this is to allow efficient and economically viable provision of tax-supported and fee-supported services. Enable the orderly development of private lands which benefit from this cost-effective availability of services, and to equitably allocate the cost of public services and management of development on the urban fringe. And so we'll talk about that within context tonight. This is a map of the areas of city impact for Kootenai County. And if you take a look at this map, you'll see in blue the area of city impact for Rathdrum, pink is Hauser, red is the city of Hayden, green is Post Falls, and yellow is the city of Coeur d'Alene. Wherever you see the lighter corresponding color, these are areas that are part of the primary tier of that respective city's ACI. And so these are areas that the cities were anticipated to grow into. There are provisions within those ACI agreements about consultation on development, about extension of utilities, about the fact that these are lands that are primed for annexation. There is an area that is out in the middle that's gray that is also part of the area of city impact agreements, but it's an area that's called the shared tier. And you'll see that our property lies right here in the pink area. So again, Idaho Code speaks to legislative intent as it relates to areas of city impact. And they have 3 different factors that should be considered when establishing this, and that were established or that were considered when the ACIs were adopted. And that's trade area, geographic factors, and areas that can reasonably be expected to be annexed to the city in the future. So these agreements have been in place for, I believe, nearly 20 years. And the cities have been planning and annexing in accordance with these agreements. The county comprehensive plan has a designation of border for this property. And with border, they again recognize that these are areas that will be annexed. It says that they're prior to annexation that you'll usually see some type of agricultural pursuits, probably rural lifestyle lots. And that basically when cities provide services, that's at that point, that's when you start to see annexation and intensification of land uses in those areas. This is the city's old comprehensive plan, which I have not removed yet. And here's the city zoning map. So again, you can see this property and see the zoning that's adjacent to it. This is the R1 zone. And right across the street from the property, we have Panhandle Health, the elementary school, Atlas Elementary School. So we have some public lands, but generally a pattern of R1 zoning. The city's comprehensive plan, this property is basically located in this area here. So we see that it's an area that's designated for R1 zoning into the future. This is a map showing prior annexations that have occurred in this area north of Prairie. And so these are annexations that have occurred primarily in the last 10 years. So we have the Jacot and Bluegrass, which were both fairly large annexations. And the Carrington, Grossglasser was a smaller annexation similar to this, and so was Giovanni. This is a map showing you similar subdivisions in the area. If it's in blue, these are more of the scale of what we could possibly see. This isn't a subdivision hearing, but just to show you what you might see in an area like this. And then again, showing the context that this is within an environment where there are many other large and established subdivisions. This is a map showing you the different public and commercial developments that are in the area. So again, the blue star here, Atlas Elementary, Panhandle Health, both public, Prairie Avenue Community Church and School. We have a storage facility, a new building materials facility, Cornerstone Church. So very close to Prairie Avenue and Atlas Avenue, both of which are arterials with commercial and public activities happening. In terms of infrastructure, there's a 10-inch sewer line that's present in Atlas Road. The H5 basin, this is actually the basin map, and this shows you that the H5 lift station has capacity, or this is actually where our sewer will go. We're in the yellow area, so we'll go across the road. And this lift station has capacity, and we do have a will serve letter. Any stormwater will be provided in roadside systems or on-site. Potable water and fire flow, we have a will serve letter from Hayden Lake Irrigation District. And as to streets, North Atlas Road is a minor arterial, and we did create a hypothetical future trip generation letter. And this is hypothetical because, again, we're not doing a development at this time, but it was a condition that the council had applied. And so this shows 17 p.m. average peak hour trips with 161 average weekday trips. Looking to the environment, the topography is generally flat. There are no wetlands or riparian areas that are found in this area, and there's no mapped floodplain. As to agency comments, this is located within the Coeur d'Alene School District. Neither the Coeur d'Alene or Districts 272 have commented. And at Kootenai County Community Development, we have no comments or concerns. And from the airport, we have no objection as the density proposed is consistent with the existing development pattern in the area, but they did request a navigation easement. So there are standards that are applicable for annexation. We've covered, hit on a few already, but in Idaho state law, we have 50222, which is annexation by cities, 676509, which really relates to the comprehensive plan, and then 676511, which relates to the zoning ordinance. And then in Hayden City Code, we have the annexation procedure and the standards of approval. And here are the standards of approval. And so with the standards of approval, the city council may adopt the zone ordinance amendment. This relates a little bit more to the zoning ordinance than to the annexation. But they consider the existing zoning district or regulations, and they can recommend approval, conditional approval, modification, or denial. Or they can require additional studies, which in this case, the staff asks them to do that up front, which is the information that we provided with the trip generation report. They can impose conditions where they feel that there is a need, and the Planning Commission can also recommend conditions. The amendment will be in accordance with future land use map and goals and policies found in the Hayden Comprehensive Plan. And the amendments to the zoning map and zone text will align with the zone district's purpose and intent. And so in looking at this and looking at our proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city. We are consistent with the zone district that is around us, and feel that this would be applicable. Some considerations in reviewing this. So this property is located on North Atlas Road, which is a minor arterial that has the capacity to handle the growth. It does provide access already to the airport and industrialized areas, as well as residential subdivisions to the north. So this isn't a little, tiny private road leading into the property. It's a significant regional arterial. Water, sewer, stormwater, and transportation infrastructure are present. We have will serves and trip generation letters regarding the capacity. There are no environmental conditions of concern. This is an urbanizing area with services that are evidenced, as we've talked, by the public and private businesses that are in the area. This is also an area with similar subdivisions and frequent annexation activity. In fact, at the highest level of annexation activity in the city. This is surrounded by city on the north, south, east, and west, and in this case, to the south would be the city of Coeur d'Alene. And this is within the ACI since the time that the ACI agreements have been created. A review of the area does not indicate that there's any level of commercial, agricultural, or ranching activities. There are rural lifestyle lots in the area. But again, looking to the county's comprehensive plan and zoning, those lands are to be held at that until annexed into the city, and there's a recognition that there will be those activities happening. Other areas of the city are not as prime for annexation, and when I speak to this, I'm speaking to the fact that there are other areas that are not on arterial streets. There are other areas that don't have sewer available. There are other areas that have limited infrastructure in terms of lift stations that are able to accommodate and treat sewer. And so this is just a really good area in terms of availability of infrastructure. This is consistent with the city and county comprehensive plans as well as annexation law. It meets with the legislative intent for an ACI. This is consistent with the county's comprehensive plan, border designation, which I've covered, consistent with the R1 zoning, which is intended for stable neighborhoods of single-family dwellings on smaller lots. And it's also consistent with the legislative intent of Idaho annexation statutes, and that it's allowing for orderly development in areas where you can efficiently and economically provide tax and fee support services. And it also allows you to benefit from the location of those within an urbanizing area. And so when I speak to that again, if you look at development in other areas where there's a new extension of utilities, where there are other things that are happening, that's not the case here. This is an area where the city is already providing snow plowing services. We already have the fire department providing for emergency response. We have water districts, we have sewer districts that are providing for the utilities that are needed in this area. So that is the presentation that I have, and I am here to answer any questions that you might have tonight.
Let's see if there are.
I did have one question. So realizing that you have no idea how the land's gonna be cut up or what's gonna be put on it, how did you, the trip study, did you use 5 houses, 10 houses? What was the assumption?
The assumption for the trip study was actually based on, I'm gonna go back to this map here. It was based on the Gianna Estate South subdivision, which is a nearly identical lot to this. It's 5 acres and it's the Hayden Lake irrigated tract. It also has the same east-west orientation, the same lot size.
And is it developed yet?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we utilized the number of lots that were created in that subdivision to arrive at that one. And we actually, if we are to do a subdivision, think that we would actually possibly have fewer lots because the city is looking a little bit more at connectivity of the road system, internal to our system.
Thank you.
Mary?
Yeah, so how many lots does the Lake subdivision have in it?
17.
So you got 3 vote, huh?
Oh, yeah, I didn't ask.
Oh, sorry, Sean, I forgot. Trying to stand up here where I can see you.
Ben's usually noisier over there, right?
I'm sorry.
Just kidding. All right, so how do I get this thing to go down? Any ideas?
Hit the X where it says Jackie's Family Trust. Or, yeah, you can double click that, that'll work.
Oh, there you go. Good job. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna try to do this analysis. As you know, these staff reviews have kind of been rearranged a bit, so they have an appendix in them. And so all of the Hayden City Code and Idaho statutes are through pages 1 through 8 of that appendix section of the staff review that you've got. And there are 4 kind of standards that we're looking at, or kind of items that we're looking at. So the commission shall consider the existing zoning district or regulations and may recommend approval, conditional approval, modification, or denial of the proposal, or the commission may defer action until completion of such studies or plans as may be necessary to determine the advisability of the proposal. So, as Ms. Kruger has talked about, the area that we are looking at is in the exclusive area of city impact. And that is also within what Kootenai County shows as on their future land use map as the border area. So the exclusive area of city impact is an infill area, as shown in this map as well, is surrounded by black. And the black means that it is some incorporated area. And as we said earlier, if I could find a mouse, all of this black is the city of Hayden, 3 sides, and the southern portion is the city of Coeur d'Alene. So it literally is part of a larger whole, but part of infill. And so the county recognizes that in their future land use map as border area, that gray, and that is prior to annexation, this area is to be agricultural or single family dwellings. That's pretty much what's out there. It has very limited development, and it is expected to be annexed consistent with the city's long-range plans. That's what it exists today on the county's future land use map. On our future land use map that was approved as part of the 2040 comprehensive plan, we show this as being pretty much surrounded by other single-family residential almost in the center. And our zone map today shows all of the areas that have been subdivided: Strawberry Fields, Broadmoor Estates, Giovanna, Balzer Estates, pretty much as all being residential single family. This is Panhandle Health District and the school, and they're zoned agriculture. So 11.2.2 says that the purpose of the zone designation, so the comprehensive plan outlines the preferred land uses that will shape the city. The future land use map of the comprehensive plan outlines a picture of Hayden through the designation of land into 8 different categories. And single-family residential R1, by definition, is a zone that provides for the classic Hayden neighborhood where single-family homes on smaller lots are permitted, and accessory dwelling units are permitted, but 2-family dwellings are not. So the second condition, or the second item that we're looking at, is that the city council may impose conditions upon rezoning where such conditions are required to ensure that the proposed uses of the area are consistent with the community needs and its public health, safety, and general welfare. The Planning Commission may recommend conditions upon rezoning for the city council's consideration. So if we were to look at the parks plan, which was adopted also, it identifies no large park area on this little, almost 5-acre piece of property, but it does identify this dotted green line, which is a greenway, extension, and linkage. And it kind of hooks things together up Atlas to the Atlas Park on Honeysuckle, the Atlas School on Honeysuckle, and then to the west where there's a future school as well as another park in Carrington. So as part of the conditions of approval or added conditions of the annexation, we're looking for a 10-foot multimodal path to meet both the parks plan requirement as well as the transportation master plan requirement. Impact fees would still be collected at the time of each building permit. So related to sewer, Hayden City Code Title 12, Chapter 6 requires that sewer, when it's constructed, must be constructed in conformance with the sewer master plan, state law, and all city sewer policies and standards. That would be reviewed at the time of development. This site is within the H5 sewer basin, and will serve letters were received from the city as part of the annexation request, but those will be required to be updated at the time of any development proposal that comes forward. And sewer shall be provided to the extent of the property for future connectivity. Stormwater. Hayden City Code, Title 8, Chapter 3 prohibits the stormwater from leaving the site. Pretty much, you can't accelerate it, you can't concentrate it, you can't convey that runoff and stormwater onto other surface waters beyond the project boundaries. And so stormwater is always reviewed at the time of site plan development or subdivision development on a property. Make sure it stays where it's at. Potable water and fire flow. So we received a will serve letter from Hayden Lake Irrigation District. And again, that'll need to be updated at the time of future development. And then any future development would be required to meet Northern Lakes Fire Protection District's requirements related to fire flows and access. In the comments that were received from the public comments, there was a comment related to water lines on water mains and water lines on the project site. And I actually reached out to Hayden Lake Irrigation District because we hadn't seen anything in what they responded to us that talked about any concerns. So there are water mains on the site, but the water mains are both going to be abandoned as part of the process or relocated as part of the process. So Hayden Lake Irrigation District didn't have any issues with the water main concerns that were listed in that comment. Streets, pedestrian paths, and utilities. So this is a snippet out of the 2040 updated transportation plan, and it shows Atlas as yellow, and that's a 3-lane commercial or light industrial roadway. The project at the time of development will be required to build their half width, so the western half width of Atlas Road. They did provide a trip generation letter, and just for the matter of the audience that's here, in the transportation traffic impact analysis kind of guidelines that were adopted also with the transportation strategic plan, it identified that the purpose of a traffic impact analysis is to determine improvements, if any, that are necessary to accommodate the new development, to identify potential problems with their proposed development which may influence the developer's decision to pursue it, allow the city to assess the impacts that a proposed development may have, provide direction to decision makers and developers of expected impacts and mitigation measures for resolving those impacts, and to reduce potential negative impacts created by development. So that's the purposes that are identified in that traffic impact analysis guideline. And then they also list guidance as to when you need to go past the trip gen letter and actually do a full-blown traffic impact analysis. And those trigger points are when the peak hour exceeds 75 vehicle trip ends, when the average daily trips exceed 500 trips, or when the development changes the current comp plan assumptions. Their request, the annexation request, and the potential number of lots didn't trip any of those additional requirements that would be there, so didn't meet those requirements. So this is the portal. Pardon me?
Hey, could you touch on that part about the water rights thing again? Just thinking about what this person's concern was, talking about how there's north, south, and east, west water lanes running, or main lines running through the property. Is that really a concern? Can you touch base on that one more time, please?
So I spoke with Brandon Rose from Hayden Lake Irrigation District today and asked him if there was a concern related to the water mains that were being identified, both running east and west and north and south. He said that as part of any future development of the site, that the developer would be required to vacate those lines and either vacate them or move them. Either way, they would be put in the correct location for future development. So he did not express any concern.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the map of the two districts. The area that's in green is the Coeur d'Alene School District, and the area that's in blue is the Lakeland School District boundaries. And so as you can see, this site is just directly south of Honeysuckle, so it's in the Coeur d'Alene School District. They are directly across the street from Atlas Elementary, and then on down the street, this is a school district piece of property that is directly on the border south of what would happen if Honeysuckle continued to the west. The Coeur d'Alene Airport Intercritical Zone, it was identified very early on, hence the request to have correspondence with the Coeur d'Alene Airport regarding the location of this subdivision with the intercritical zone. The area that is in blue is the intercritical zone of the property, and the property is outlined in green. And per the airport agency comment dated July 28th, the Coeur d'Alene Airport has no comments, but they requested an navigation easement over the entire parcel. So number 3, amendments to the zoning map and zone text shall be in accordance with the future land use map and the goals and policies found in the Hayden Comprehensive Plan. So single-family residential, as defined in the comprehensive plan, represents a classic Hayden neighborhood where single-family homes dominate and densities are low, typically ranging from 3 to 4 units per acre. Accessory dwelling units are permitted, but 2-family dwellings and other missing middle housing is not. And again, here it is, kind of the sea of yellow. So in the appendix, the goals, policies, and actions for the entire comp plan are listed, and then a subset of those are pulled out with every staff analysis. And so we kind of identified that goals 3, 4, 8, 10, 12, 13, 15, 16, 19, and some of their associated policies and actions would apply here. And then amendments to the zoning map and zone text shall align with the zone district's purpose and intent. And so this is just kind of a snippet out of the setbacks for principal structures and detached accessory buildings within the residential R1 zone. Your minimum lot size is 8,250 square feet. You have to have 20 feet of public or private street frontage. Yes, accessory dwelling units are allowed by definition. You've heard that like 4 times tonight. You can only have 45% maximum lot coverage, which means you still have 55% of each lot is open. And then the front yard setbacks and maximum height is 35 feet, so that's about 2 stories. This little one over here is reference to the bullet that's below your table. It's in your staff review that talks about how ADUs can be constructed in accessory structures on the site. So then notice and comments went out, and the agency comments that we heard back from, which was Hayden Lake Irrigation District, Kootenai County Community Development, and Coeur d'Alene Airport, all had no comments, no concerns. Hayden Lake Irrigation District provided a will serve letter, and Coeur d'Alene Airport requested that navigation easement. We did receive 3 public comments, and they were all in a memo to the commission. Mr. Rohrbach is opposed. Mr. Tolzman was opposed. He's concerned about having subdivisions on the prairie and concerned about traffic to the school. And Mr. Bouchane was opposed with traffic concerns and crime and trespassers, and again, those water easements and mains. So we had 5 staff recommended conditions as part of the annexation request. The first one is that the applicant shall enter into an annexation agreement, that any future development of the site and or subdivision, the applicant would be required to comply with the requirements from Northern Lakes Fire Protection District. And the grant of roadway, drainage, utility, and snow storage, that easement, that granting of that easement and dedication of right-of-way in accordance with that 3-lane commercial road along Atlas would be required at the time of annexation. And then should those road standards change, which I'm not seeing happen anytime soon, but if they were to change before this develops, that the developer would possibly have to dedicate additional right-of-way. The developer shall be required to use City of Hayden sewer and shall extend those sewer to the boundaries of the future development, and that navigation easement as requested from the Coeur d'Alene Airport be recorded as a condition of the annexation agreement and prior to the recordation of the annexation ordinance. So the Planning and Zoning Commission can recommend approval with conditions, or deny the request to annex as single-family residential. Questions for me?
Corey?
I was gonna say, can you pop up the picture again for the overview of location of it?
Tell me when I get to the right one. This one or this one? Farther?
That's good, okay.
Is that okay?
I just wanted to, okay, yeah, that'll work, okay. Very good, thank you.
Sean?
I have a question. To annex into the city of Hayden, the landowner has to come to us, is that correct? The city of Hayden doesn't force somebody to be annexed, is that correct?
Not.
We have not gone through a category B or C annexation, not in the time that I've represented the city. Donna, have you ever done, yeah, so, Donna's been here over 20 years, so I think the legislature that statute is one that's up yearly for review by the legislature, and so it's actually pretty difficult to do a category B or C annexation anyway, but no, this is category A, which means it is a request from the landowner to initiate.
Yeah, my question to that was just because I know that there's some agricultural uses to the south, and those people, we couldn't force them to annex in. We just had usage, okay.
Right. So can a city and county do a forced annexation? Yes, it has to fall under Idaho Code 50-222, which is the state annexation statute for that. And those set forth some pretty strict guidelines on when it's category B, when it's category C, and what those procedures are.
Any other questions, Sean? Great.
So, in annexing, do we have to annex at the R1? That was so I totally get that it's all in yellow, but I'm not anxious for us to have a sea of houses like the other cities that we will eventually order as we all grow together. And we talked about wanting there to be a different character.
So zoning under the Local Land Use Planning Act and Cities Code requires that the zoning districts be in compliance with your comprehensive plan. What you've projected that to be in your comprehensive plan and future land use map. So that's what we look at first when annexation is a two-step process combined in the same hearing, but one is a request. I'm interested in annexing, is the city interested? That's one, and that's part of the hearing. And two is the zone designation that would be applied. And those have to be applied at the same time as the request for annexing. But when we look at the zoning, the guidance on zoning for the state statute in our city's code that mirrors that is that it needs to be in accordance with our comprehensive plan. So, and last time, we weren't in between two. We had one in, if you have the other in effect until you adopt your resolution, but they came in pretty much in the middle. Of the 2008 comprehensive plan still called for this area to be R1, our 2040 comprehensive plan still designates this area to be R1. So the long way of saying anything under that isn't supported by our comprehensive plan. If you were wanting to look at that, it would be better to do a comprehensive plan amendment than consider an annexation and zoning rather than do it in the reverse, where the zoning you're applying is not in accordance with what you've set in your comp plan.
So, here's my concern. I totally get everything you just said, and I realize that boxes need to be checked and all that. But when I read, Hayden is a regionally connected city with a small town feel defined by responsible growth and planning, this city maintains strong systems that align with the values of its citizens, including good schools, roadway management, plentiful open space. I'm wondering if we fill that entire prairie with minimum lot sizes, if we aren't going directly against what we say we stand for.
I understand the concern. I think on the one hand, we like to see infill first rather than, mass chunks of property on the prairie that business would fall largely into a definition for the city of what is considered infill. There's parts of the city, not in this image, but in other ones Donna has, where there's, city in different areas surrounding this area. But on the other hand, you don't have to annex it. That's purely a request that has come before you of the property owner and the applicant requesting that. That's not something that's it's a privilege, not a right, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. They are coming to request that of you. It's not something that you're obligated to do. But when we look at annexation, one of the factors I think we want to consider is what our code strives to, same with our comp plan, is it infill? Is this, it's not developing and extending any farther? Is this something inside the general area, a pocket that you could develop? I don't know that lessens your concern about developing on the prairie, but when it comes to annexation, it is a request. It's not, they're coming to request annexation, and it's just guaranteed a process, not an outcome.
Are there any other questions?
I would like to offer one tidbit to her sentence. She's talked about open space. So Stoddard Park is right here, Broadmoor Park is right here, Carrington has an 8-acre park that's required as part of this southern portion of Hayden Avenue because they transitioned parkland that was required of them in their Carrington to the north of Hayden Avenue to the south, and the school has this 40-acre piece of property right here. So just as a matter of the open space bit that you were reading in there, it is, it's got a good sizable chunk of open space around this parcel that's infill in the middle.
So the west side of this county section, is that along 41 or
Hutter.
Sorry. So there was purpose in annexing that, right?
It was a request that came forward to annex, and they were granted that annexation.
Okay. No, I don't have any more questions.
Okay, Brandon, any questions?
None at the moment.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will move on to the public testimony, public comment part of the hearing. And there are some that wish to speak, so I will read as usual this statement. Anyone who wants to offer comments regarding the subject case, please submit a completed form located on the table by the interest board. Forms must have your name, address, date, and whether you want to testify in support of, opposed to, or are neutral. Anyone planning to speak must do so at the podium or on the computer, so the remarks can be heard in the recording system. All questions and comments will be directed to the commission and not to the applicant. The applicant will have the opportunity to answer questions and offer a rebuttal after all public testimony is completed. All speakers will need to state their name and address for the record before they begin speaking. I will call first those supporting the application, then those uncommitted, and finally those opposed to the application. So with that.
Can you tell me what slide you'd like me to leave up?
Let's leave that one up for now.
Okay.
So we have Rich Swoboda, is supporting the applicant's request and wishes to speak.
My name is Rich Swoboda. My address is 2900 North Government Way, number 38 in Coeur d'Alene. I'm here on behalf of Jackie Mabry. She's my significant other. She had to go to immediate care tonight. She got something in her eye. She just wanted to relay to you kind of her history regarding the property and her history in town. She was raised in Coeur d'Alene. She went through elementary all the way through Coeur d'Alene High School, graduated. She's the youngest of 5 kids, all of which attended Coeur d'Alene High School and graduated. She had 2 kids that also attended Coeur d'Alene High School and graduated from there, and she has a number of grandkids that are at Coeur d'Alene and Lake City. Her oldest grandchild just graduated from Coeur d'Alene High School. She, at a young age, she took over the raising her oldest granddaughter, and at that time she had moved out of town. And when her daughter got to middle school age, she moved back into the Coeur d'Alene area and hence bought this property so that her daughter could attend the Coeur d'Alene, or granddaughter could attend the Coeur d'Alene schools. At the time that she purchased the property, it had been in foreclosure. She was the winning bid, and she purchased it and she proceeded to upgrade it. It had been run down. She went in and spent, in 2011, spent probably $150,000 fixing up the house and, renovating the property. It had been her intention at the time when she purchased that, because it was across the street from the elementary school, is that, real estate is an investment, and she figured based on its location, it would go up in value. It wasn't her intention at the time of purchase to subdivide. She just thought she'd improve the property, it'd sit there, and the value would go up. She said in 2019 she'd received a letter informing her about the comprehensive plan, and that was when she realized that she could, that she could request subdivision. And so since then, that's kind of been what her plan has been, is like to, subdivide the, annex and subdivide. The house that stands there, she's fairly attached to it, so if this was to be annexed in and subdivided, it's not her intention to tear that house down. She'd like to keep it, and she'd like it to fit into the neighborhood nicely. Similar to Giovanni, they purchased that house, there was an existing home on it, and they built the neighborhood around that house. And if you drive in down that street, the only way you can tell it's the existing home is because it's sitting at an angle, and her house would be fairly similar. It's sitting fairly far back off the street. It's almost dead center of the property. So our preliminary ideas, it looks like most of those houses will be in the back. There won't be a whole lot. There might be one lot up on the front. As far as, my understanding was the max was like 5-to-1 housing, or 4-to-1. Yeah, and her intention is not to like totally pack that. We're tossing around the idea of 3 to 4 houses per acre, 3.5 or something like that, because she wants it to fit in. She wants it to look good. She's a lifelong resident. She's looking at this project not from development eyes, but from a legacy standpoint. She's thought of, if she's allowed to, naming the subdivision Mabry Meadows and maybe Jacqueline Court or Jacqueline Drive, just to, honor her father, kind of. So that's kind of her plan. She's, this would be a one-time deal for her. So she's also been a business owner in Coeur d'Alene for 30 years. She's an owner of the Coeur d'Alene Denture Clinic on 4th, which she purchased in 1992. It's located on 4th, just south of the English funeral home there. So, yeah, I can't think of, I'm standing in for her, so I can't think of anything else that she would've wanted to add, but she can look at the video and tell me later what I should have added. So, I don't think I can take questions, but, that's it, so thanks for your time.
Questions?
Okay.
All right, thank you. So we don't have anybody wishing to speak who's neutral, but we have several that are opposed. So we'll start with Christine and Will Thompson are on the computer. And I guess I have a question, do both of you want to speak or only one?
We can both speak, we can tag team.
Okay, so I guess the floor is yours. Would you start with your name and address, please?
Yes, I'm Christine, my husband Will Thompson. Our address is 3344 West Bean Avenue. And I'd just like to say we are strongly opposed to this annexation. This area has always been agriculture and is presently zoned as agriculture because that's how it's being used. We personally are presently raising the third generation on this property to use it agriculturally. And once we annex and change the zoning, there's really no going back. If it's annexed, the only result would be a housing subdivision. And what happens then? For those of us that live around here, our water supply is affected, our organic gardens are affected, and we operate a licensed raw milk dairy for the state of Idaho, so our livelihood could be affected by this. We have farm animals, and what do farm animals do? They make noise, they smell, they contribute to the compost heap that fertilizes our organic gardens, and they can be dangerous and aggressive at times. Who's gonna be responsible when some well-meaning but ignorant neighbor sticks their hand through the fence and is injured? How are we gonna protect our organic gardens when the neighbors in the neighborhood decide to spray chemicals to kill their weeds? And who's gonna protect our honeybee hives when the neighbors spray pesticides? What can we do to prevent the disruption to our water supply, the ruining of our organic gardens, and the danger to our livestock and the natural system? Really, the answer is simple. It's just don't annex. There's nothing to be lost by keeping this area as agriculture, and there's really a lot to be gained. There are multiple sections of land surrounding us that have been annexed, and they are filled with people. Can't we just keep some open space left here? And I know that there's a lot of considerations that are being made here tonight. Please just don't forget that all these neighbors that are opposed are real people. We're not statistics on paper, we're not a report, we're not something planned for decades down the road. Every property owner around this property is opposed to it being annexed. For decades, we've lived here and we've farmed here. This annexation is zoning us out. So please, please, let us keep living this agricultural life that we've been living for decades and with multiple generations.
And I appreciate how all the points that Christine brought out. What I wanted to bring out is that water line does have an effect. It will disrupt our water supply to change that. We do have an easement right now to have it fed the way it's fed. And not only will it disrupt our water supply, but it'll take considerable work on our property to make the necessary changes to even get that working the way it is now. So that does have a big effect. That's not just abandon that and no problem. Maybe from certain points of view that's the case, but not from ours as property owners. And one thing that really seems important to me is that every single property owner around this property is strongly opposed. So that does matter. And we bought this property because of the agricultural zoning, because of the lot sizes, and it is our livelihood, and we plan to have our future in this area. So we feel like we're getting pushed out, and just because of the comprehensive plan, we also have plans for the future of this area, and we feel like our plan and our investment was made before Hayden decided to make a potential plan, and it doesn't seem acceptable to push us out of the area, but that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Linnell Delbaum?
Delbaum.
Is the applicant's request and wishes to speak.
Okay, I am Linnell Delbaum, and I am absolutely opposed. I live at 3490 West Bean Avenue, there in Hayden, and I don't know if that mic goes with me, but let me tell you, that's me. That is the Thompsons. And that's the Rohrbachs. Okay. Oh, gosh, I messed up, sorry. That's the Beauchesnes, my parents. Thompsons are on the other side. My family moved to this neighborhood in 1973. We were the new kids on the block. Will and Christine's family was already there. So I don't know what year they were there. I, as a child growing up, played with Christine's older sisters. Milbert Rohrbach, he came and took care of the alfalfa fields, you know, in the property I'm at now, which my parents had bought originally. And so, as you can see, Christine is completely right. And by the way, I second everything Will and Christine said. It is completely surrounded by a neighborhood that still exists. You know, my kids and grandkids, and if we're talking about generations, we're talking about 5 on my property. Because my parents, next door is myself, my kids and my grandkids have actually lived in our house as well at one time. So we're talking 5 generations. So there's a lot of meaning, okay? And we really would like it to stay agricultural. That is our suggestion. So that's the background, and having it as R1 would make it way dense, and it breaks up the neighborhood of existing neighbors that we have been with since 1973 and before. Okay, I'm going to read to you some notes that I had put together hastily, so if it's a little incongruent, I'm sorry, but I was looking at the Imagine Hayden 2040 comprehensive plan, and yes, I want to acknowledge Hayden or Atlas Elementary School and Panhandle Health is across the street on Atlas Road. But the part that would be built up with higher density homes is what will break up our neighborhood. And it's been agricultural for decades, just like Will and Christine said, it's been agricultural for decades. You know, they have a farm. You know, there's been, all these years, there's been alfalfa raised on the property that is ours and my parent, you know, that was my parents. And I actually started an organic herbal garden and thus, you know, a farm on our property. And so there are plans, they are correct, there are plans, there are future plans. And we really want it to stay as agricultural. If that just can't happen in the future, at least consider the residential suburban. All right, and remember there is a precedence in this neighborhood. All right, and I want to also mention that once the zones are changed, well, it might have been, I think maybe someone else made a comment. I wrote that a higher density would break up that, once fields become houses, there's no going back and there's no second chance. Okay, and we also need to be mindful of the natural resources within the city limits of Hayden. And the Imagine Hayden 2040 comprehensive plan does bring up the fact that there is lesser dense areas in that comprehensive plan. And Commissioner Howard, I really appreciated what you were having to say. I really did. All right, so it's really important to have areas that are lesser dense. And some of the, like I said, we need to be very mindful of the natural resources. And I was doing a little bit of research, and according to the book Hot, Flat, and Crowded by Thomas L. Friedman, filling in every space of land which with dense housing is actually damaging to our community and way further out past our community. There needs to be differences in density. That's the health of our community. And there just needs to be places for our community to be able to breathe. Within a stone's throw, there's already 2 very dense apartment complexes on either side. So we already have some high density going on that's even much more dense than the R1. Okay, and so it's important to leave areas where the original topsoil is intact, where the aquifer, we have to think about the aquifer, where it has safe places to recharge. And according to the website SpokaneCounty.org, the aquifer, and I heard that mentioned already today, the aquifer is the sole source of water for most people in Spokane County in Washington and in Kootenai County here in Idaho. The EPA designated the aquifer as a sole source aquifer, and that was in 1978. And it's also highly susceptible to contamination. And on page 23 of Imagine Hayden 2040 Comprehensive Plan, there is the consideration of preservation of open space. And it states, the land use plan also allows for continued agricultural uses on the outskirts of the city. Imagine, Hayden states on page 32, the Rathdrum Spokane Aquifer provides drinking water for approximately 500,000 people in northern Idaho and eastern Washington, according to the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, even though the aquifer lies 150 to 400 feet below the surface. It is susceptible to damage and contamination. But you know, that we might be talking about only 5 acres, but we need those little areas. And we're not talking about, you know, we have parks, but those are grassed and fertilized. You know, those aren't natural areas. Our little 5-acre space is natural area, you know, with plants and alfalfa and, you know, and like the Thompsons and myself, we're into organic. We're not into putting a bunch of chemicals in, and we're very mindful of our environment. All right. So, you know, the aquifer is such a gift, and we just need to be very mindful of how we spread the densities across the area. And I also want to bring up that many of the families in the greater neighborhood rely on wells for drinking, and that includes my own family. We are on a well. And many of my neighbors to the west of myself, of our property, is on a well. And we don't want the quality of our well water to be compromised. We also do not want the integrity of our wells to be damaged by the pounding of the building houses. I mean, you know, quarter mile north, we feel it on our property, all those houses that are going up. And so we're worried about it being so close to our existing wells, it could permanently damage them. And you guys, I appreciate you guys brought it up, but yes, the Thompson's water will be interrupted by building. And they rely on that water that the mains which are under the property, the proposed property. They use that water on their farm, so they are impacted. And then I also wanted to comment that during the recent COVID shutdown, Bean Avenue and Cranston were popular places for the nearby housing development residents to walk. Having the lower density allowed people to get out of the higher density areas and walk where the atmosphere was less formal and less crowded. You know, we're a bit more country here. You know, you got your natural plants. We're not all, you know, grass and HOAs. So we're a bit more natural. And the taste of the countryside is beneficial for our fellow community members' physical and mental health. It's not just us, it's the general community. And so keeping us agricultural is actually healthy and for everyone's benefit. Okay, on page 23 of Imagine Hayden 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Oh, sorry, I think actually I'm repeating that part.
If you could, yeah, hold on.
Yes.
So there's a 5-minute time limit. So if you could, you exceeded that, but if you could just wrap up your comments.
All right, I'm on my last paragraph. Is that all right?
If you're quick.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. You know what? Yes, I would appreciate if we could, if the motion could be denied and we can remain agricultural. That's it. And I appreciate and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right.
Ed DePriest is opposed to the request and wishes to speak.
I have a kind of question before I start. Isn't there normally public comment and hearing, or just, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I'll let you know. That was not on the agenda, so that's why we didn't do the public.
Is it sometimes? That's why I'm kind of confused.
We have had it before. It's not regularly on our planning and zoning agenda. If commission would like it to be, we can place it on as a regular standing agenda item, like council does.
Maybe discussion for later.
Yeah.
Just, there we go.
I was just, because some of my comments are going to be related to what's here, but there's going to be a little bleed over of what would be a normal, kind of a public comment to it. So, excuse me. My name is Ed DePriest. I'm at 8116 North Stonehaven, and I'm going to bounce around a little bit here based on some things that have been said already. First of all, good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity here. Commissioner Howard is correct, and what city attorney said to her, if you're not happy with the zoning, you do not have to annex. Okay, there is nothing that requires you to, and you can consider a comprehensive plan amendment related to the concerns with the zoning. As the residents have said, the people who are close to it, the 2040 comprehensive plan and future land use map, I don't know, or doesn't appear that many of them were consulted as to what they wanted to go in when they zoned this for single family. I'm going to talk about these properties here a little bit, and obviously when I get to them, I'll indicate it. I only really have one issue to discuss related to this annexation and zoning. We who pay attention constantly hear about criteria, and almost always see, well, if it meets the criteria, check, 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 on it goes to the council. Unfortunately, there's a large and growing sentiment that it's a waste of time to give public input to the Planning Commission on these issues. Public input is not criteria, apparently, okay? There is no consideration for whether the current residents, voters, community members feel it is in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of those who live in the community, let alone the immediate vicinity of the issue at hand. People keep seeing and hearing public input opposing development and watch it be approved because it meets the criteria. Some people ask, why? What's the use? It's a waste of time. It doesn't matter. They're going to do it anyway, okay? And that's a serious consideration, I think. So I often hear in criteria that the applicant property must be compatible with the adjacent properties. And here's what I'm talking about, compatible. I look at the, do we want this is going to be all compatible to what they want to do? And this is really just going to be an extension. Here it goes. Because the next one's going to come in along and say, well, we're adjacent to or compatible or whatever it is. Next thing you know, this whole area is going to look like that there. But as far as criteria, are these properties here, which are about 1 home per acre, immediately adjacent to the border of this, compatible with R1? 4 to 5, whatever it is, acres, properties per acre. I think that's one acre, 1 per acre there. Okay, so in my opinion, that's not compatible based on criteria. Okay. The applicant lot has a home on what looks like might be about 1 acre, and then I think they said, behind it, probably run a road down to the back side of it. So how is the request for single-family zoning compatible with the homes directly north and adjacent, which are 1 acre lots? If this applicant lot is to be compatible with homes adjacent, then they should be 1 acre lots, or maybe half acre, and I think that's been brought up a couple times this evening. But no, I have a feeling this will be approved because it is in the comprehensive plan and the future land use, and as was kind of brought up here, the planners apparently decided that those 1 acre lots will have to suck it up and accept that they will eventually be surrounded by single family homes, wall-to-wall tract homes, if they want to stay there, or eventually sell out and be developed into tract homes so more people density can be packed into the city of Hayden. I'm asking, where's the consistency when talking about criteria? When it fits the need, it's used. When it doesn't fit the need, it appears to somewhat be not, or ignored, I guess, or dismissed as not that important. People see an appearance of picking and choosing when and what criteria are relevant on a project-by-project basis. Kind of another issue that kind of gets back to what I said about people really not feeling that public comment really has any of an impact as criteria. But a question I would ask is, how many people would have to pack into these rooms, this room, in opposition to, let's just use this project, and what would be enough, if at all, to deny the project, even though they checked all the criteria boxes, but the people said, this isn't what we want for our city. We do not, this is creating such density of people who get on the streets, who who crowd the schools, who you run into at the stores. And it's just, it's people density more so than it is really residential density, because that residential density obviously brings those people. Okay, I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Priest?
No. I'm gonna excuse myself.
Corey, you leaving the meeting, or you?
I am. If you want my position, go ahead. I can't still keep dealing with that stuff. Good God.
Would you have the record reflect that Commissioner Anderson left at 6:18? Okay, Sandy White is opposed to the applicant's request permission to speak.
Hello, my name is Sandy White. I live at 939 West D Court here in Hayden, and thank you for allowing me to speak. Last week I was at the Hayden City Council meeting, and I spoke about the idea that Hayden is changing rapidly due to the fact that this comprehensive plan has been introduced. And people who weren't previously thinking about rezoning their properties or building density on their properties have now gotten that idea. I see all kinds of properties around me that are being advertised as potential mixed use, potential mixed residential. And I'm concerned that this comprehensive plan has set in motion people wanting to do things that maybe they wouldn't have done before, that they weren't thinking before. Oh, I'm gonna put a whole bunch of homes here. This is a new thought. And the comprehensive plan is generating density, and here it's generating density in an area where people have lived, and they want to keep their land pure and farm organic, and the city is encroaching on them. So I'm really apprehensive about annexing properties at this time because there are so many questions about the comprehensive plan. And I remember back in April, I can't remember the exact details, was it Wimple Construction and Viking Homes? They tried to annex a property based on this new comprehensive plan, and it was put on hold. It was denied at that time. And I think that sets a precedent for right now. So many things are up in the air with all this comprehensive plan and the future land use map. And we need to think about the density and the traffic around the elementary school, and I would just ask that we deny it at this time, based on the future land use map. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We don't have any other public comment forms, so with that, we'll move on to the rebuttal.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that, thank you everybody for what you've said. And this is never, it's never easy. And I think there's an understanding of that. And people who've lived in their homes for years and, they feel very strongly about it, and not only feel strongly about it, but they live there and they operate there. And I think there's a recognition of that. For me, there's also recognition that communities have an obligation to plan, and that with that, they also have, they accommodate people and they accommodate growth, and it's a universal thing. It happens throughout the United States. And so it's, when you're in an area that is in close to a city center, you tend to see this type of pressure. And it will always be there. It won't be just this property owner. There are a variety of other properties in that area that, we will see future requests from. In my experience, we'll also see property owners who were adamantly against annexation, that when circumstances change in their own lives, they run into financial issues, someone passes away that cared deeply about the plant or the property or that operated on the property, you also see changes. And a lot of desire then to be able to do things like annexing and densifying. And so, we do see, I think, more pressure for change in areas like this. And so I just want to recognize that, there's absolutely no disrespect intended to anybody in this application. We did wait and hold off on making this reapplication and consulted quite heavily with the city, attended different meetings that were held with the City Council and the Planning Commission before making reapplication, to really get to this question of, is the city really done with this comprehensive plan? Are these the densities that they have planned for this area? And there were a lot of meetings that were held in January and February, and I may not have all the dates right, there may have been some on either end of it, but a lot of discussion. And so as part of this, we were touching bases and trying to determine when it would be appropriate, for us to move forward, or if things had changed as part of that. And what we're finding is that, the comprehensive plan didn't change, and our application that we've submitted is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It seemed like we were waiting for, maybe some resolution of that, maybe some more information about that. I did attend a meeting where we had someone here from the Idaho Department of Water Resources who was speaking to the aquifer and, to wells. And of course, as part of that, identifying that, with wells, when you're bringing properties off of wells and onto city water, you're actually protecting the existing wells that are in the area. I'm not talking about during construction and vibration and those types of things, but that you're putting, basically like fewer straws down into the aquifer. Also, when you're putting properties on city sewer, you're lessening the impacts of sewer to other people's wells and to their wellhead protection areas by bringing in the city sewer. As to moving water lines are moved, quite frequently. As we look at this entire area that used to be the Hayden Lake irrigated district tracts, water lines have been moved many, many times. And there can be intricacy to these being located on a property line. My, top of the head response to that, because we're not in engineering or even a project, is that we would be working with HLID to relocate those. There would be appropriate notice to property owners. If something was unable to be moved, there would be a possibility potentially, depending on the location, of moving something like that near a property line. There are ways that we work through as a society the movement of utilities and utility mains quite frequently within an area, and also the establishment or extinguishment of easements related to that. I did look at the title report for this property, and I was not able to find any easements for any of this infrastructure. Hayden Lake irrigated tracts, there is kind of an easement that they have applied, and it's been a little bit of a mystery of where the source of it is. It's a very old plat. And, you know, I did bring copies of it, but clearly you won't see an easement on this property related to that. And I don't remember the dimension that they've applied, but I know they've applied it, and I believe properties like Giovanni Estates did accommodate it without extinguishing it. When we get to issues such as farm animals and honeybees and hives and organic farming, we had talked before about possibly putting, you know, a disclaimer on the plat related to agricultural practices, and I don't see that as a staff recommendation. But the other area that, and I haven't really looked into the language of that to see really how it would apply here. But the other thing that we see is that when a plat is created, notice will go out to these same property owners. And there will be an opportunity for them, you know, to comment on and potentially request something like that. And, you know, if there are ways for this owner to be sensitive to or put CC&Rs into place that would help with that, that may be something that, you know, could be a discussion. And I can't commit anyone to that, nor would I. But I have seen it done. I actually have a family member who's bought land next to a mushroom producer, and she's come and said, please, please, please don't put these types of trees because it impacts my ability to produce mushrooms. And so they're working cooperatively on that. And so maybe some education and dialogue on that. I think those are the, you know, kind of the primary issues that I wanted to address. Again, we can't address everything. I think the other item that I did want to just hit on is that the comprehensive plan does actually have agricultural land use designations within it. And I think that the majority of those are on the northwest portion of the city's planned growth areas. And so, you know, for whatever reason in the comprehensive planning process, those types of designations were not provided here. But I do know as the city goes through that process, they balance lots of different interests to come to that, and they have provided it within that location. So that is my response to that. And any questions for me?
Sean, questions? No? None for me either. All right, thank you. Okay, well, we're gonna close the hearing. No more questions. Oral comments won't be allowed from the public unless I hear otherwise. Let's proceed with deliberations. Sean?
Could I ask, can we get the full criteria?
Yes.
Please.
I don't know if they're all on one slide.
Thank you, Don.
I don't think they're all on one slide.
I think they're not either.
I thought they were. But specifically conditions of approval.
Yeah, I don't think they're all on one slide.
It might be in the appendix.
In your appendix, yeah, but I don't think I have them all on one
All
slide.
right.
No, just the staff recommended conditions, but not the 4 standards.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
That's all right. That was my brain.
Keep the same conditions for annexation and everything else.
Well, the conditions are, they start on page, find it here. There are 4. And the first is listed, page. Must be 3 maybe? Page 2 is the first condition, or the first condition. Sean, your thoughts?
Well, I just say that it meets the criteria, now the plan looks easy enough for that.
Sean, could you speak up, please?
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm on
There we
mute.
go.
I've been muted.
Restart that.
You know, we had this one before us, and I think last time we wanted to see it zoned as less homes per acre to kind of meet with the surrounding areas. You know, as we go forward here, you know, my question regarding if the the only way something can be annexed in is if the property owner comes to us and asks for it. And the reason I went to that is because these surrounding agricultural uses do not have to become single-family homes. They would have to come to us and ask for it. It could be from a change in lifestyle or family situations. And so this family has come to us and asked to be annexed in. They are in our area of impact. It's within, you know, where the comp plan designates. Would I prefer that we had another zoning and residential that was maybe 1/3 of an acre or something? Yes, but we didn't add that when we did our comp plan, and I put that on us as not bringing that up, so that's no fault of these owners. And therefore I feel that they have met the requirements. It is, city services are right there, and it's a natural extension of city boundaries. It's not something that is 2 miles away from services, it's right there. There are residential subdivisions close by. I did hear the owners, significant others state that their plan was to do, you know, not to do all 8,250 square foot lots, make them bigger lots, which I'd like to see, but we can't force that, you know, on them at this point, until we see some type of subdivision application. So at this point, my recommendation would be for approval.
Okay. Brandon?
Well, looking over the conditions of approval, it does seem like all 5 of them have been met, or will be met. The thing that I'm constantly struggling with is that nobody likes change, especially when it affects them. And also no one in Idaho wants more government control. So to answer some of the arguments that I heard from some people, it sounds to me like if somebody were to come to us and ask us to do something with their property, and our response is, you've done everything you're supposed to be doing, you've met all the criteria, but we don't like what you're doing, so therefore we're going to regulate what you're doing. That goes against everything that anybody has moved to Idaho for and what we stand for. So I'm fairly torn on this one, so I don't really have a good response right now. I'd like somebody else to speak up.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
As anybody might have guessed, I'm a huge proponent of land rights. But I think in this case, I gotta side with the people who are already there, using their land and their right to enjoy their land the way they are right now. I don't think putting an R1 subdivision in the midst of acre and 5 acre parcels is compatible. And yeah, it's across the street and it's to the north of them, but it isn't there. But if you, Donna, will you put the map back up for me, please? No, go back. I'm sorry. Go back. Where, a little bit more, right there. This concerns me that we're gonna have mixed use here if we fill all this in this way. And just because it's in our comp plan doesn't mean we need to do it all in the next 2 years. And so that concerns me, that it doesn't, yeah, it may eventually, but it doesn't have to be now. So I would have to say that the people that live on Bean and Cranston, I'm going with their right this time.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree with what Brandon and Sean said. Everybody wants their own right until it infringes upon their right, even though it's people that don't want it. It's not their property. So I do think the standards have been met. I think the whole point about being over the aquifer, I mean, if you put them on city water, like you said, you're pulling a straw out of the ground. I mean, the water, whether it comes from the city or out of a well, it's still coming out of the same aquifer, so that doesn't really have any impact in my opinion. I would have liked like to slam the door when I moved up here in 2014 too, when everybody else followed me up here from wherever they came from, but that's not the world we live in, and it's their right to do what they want with that property, so, I wouldn't like it if I was next door either, because I've walked down Bean, I live in Broadmoor, and I know how peaceful it is and how tranquil it is, and I can understand the frustration of the people who live there now, but you're asking us to control what someone else wants to do with their private property, and that just goes against everything I believe in, so I feel if it's a good fit for the city and the landowner, that it should be annexed.
Okay, thank you. I'll go next, Alan, if that's okay.
That's good.
Well, these are always hard. I mean, I have empathy for the neighbors that are next to this or potentially next to this, and, you know, it's a change and that's hard, and it's been mentioned. But I guess when I look at, you know, the situation, it's in the area city impact. The city is recognized as it grows, that's the way we're gonna grow. The county has recognized that if the city grows, that's the way it's gonna grow. I believe that it's met on the criteria. You know, and really it's in accordance with the future land use map and the zoning, so I think there are one of two things to do. One is we could deny the request for the annexation, or we could recommend the denial of the request for the annexation. And then I think that would be, accompanying that would be basically a decision by us to go back and revisit the comp plan and the future land use map and change it. And if we don't wanna do that, then I think that the annexation is the only other option, in accordance with what they requested.
And I agree completely with that, and I agree with Sean, I think that should be less dense there, and I live in Broadmoor, so I know what density is all about, and it would be great to have something that doesn't just, it's not all rammed together, and I think there's probably a lot of people on this commission that would agree with that, but, you know, we're asking the landowner here to, you know, pay the price for a mistake that the city may have made when being short-sighted when it came to the comp plan, if that's a fair statement.
Alan?
These are my thoughts, based on the standards of approval and from testimony that was given tonight. The first thing is that we have an application here for annexation. It's not an application for development. There's no guarantee what the land will look like, even though the Connie did present, here's our intentions. The fact is, one house could be on that property for the next 10 years, or not. And we're not here tonight to decide what exactly the house looks like, or the property looks like, I apologize. Just simply whether we're going to annex that piece of dirt into the city of Hayden. As far as our criteria to consider, I think the elements have been met. I do want to make the comment though that the criteria that we do consider is based on the request made. So it's not a matter of when it's convenient or that the Planning and Zoning Commission is selective. And I don't take any of these comments personally, but I think there's a piece of me that wants to educate the people who are attending so they understand that when we do our job, we're doing it by the laws, by the ordinances that are our city. We're not just winging it. Citizen input, for me personally, when it's neighboring, is very impactful, and I definitely was very moved tonight by the neighbors. In the same vein, non-neighbors who themselves live in developments or dense neighborhoods, frankly, don't have the same impact to me. It doesn't mean they don't matter. I'm just saying the people who live there as neighbors, that matters to me more. Lastly, certainly the city's in a hard spot because they're trying to plan communities, they're trying to respect neighbors and neighborhoods and protect individual property owner rights, which Brandon and Ben talked to considerably. So those are my comments. And I hope I answered your question in there somewhere.
I didn't have a question.
Well, as far as what are the criteria meant for.
Well, this would be, if anybody wants to make a motion, we can consider.
So, can I make one more comment?
Yeah, we can talk all we want.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
So last time when this was in front of us, we struggled with the R1. And we really preferred to see it residential suburban. So, is that not a compromise? And when we did that, I thought that we kind of had the feel that we wanted a buffer that would be residential suburban in an area that would give a buffer between us and the next city.
Is
But
the,
and
is
that's-
the question whether or not, about considering that again? I'm trying to follow up on that. Is the comment kind of related to whether or not we should consider that again? My comments earlier touched on that about, so on just the annexation process and the zoning that's applied to it. When we look at zoning, said a lot of it's regulated by the Local Land Use Planning Act. And our code mirrors that, just the requirements about zoning being in accordance with your comprehensive plan. And this is when you initially zone property, not even, I mean, here, we have an initial zoning of property, it is not zoned. It is in the unincorporated, so I mean, the county applies a designation to it, but that designation doesn't have to follow in the city, so it gets zoned upon annexation. And when we look at what zoning we would apply, we look to our comprehensive plan, about, well, what did we consider it to be? And here that's single family residential, that's R1. In order for us to change it to be something different, it's really improper to apply a different zone than what we've designated. It's more proper to amend our because then it's not in accordance with it, right? So it didn't meet state code, it doesn't meet our city's code.
Right.
So the proper course would be to amend the comp plan, change the zone, and then consider, you know, the request. And that's really the hang up the last time is it's effectively a denial. I mean, it really is, and should be treated as one rather than going.
And giving it a different
Right,
zoning.
that is in accordance with the
Yeah.
comp plan.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in the new comp plan, the only residential suburban on that map is an existing area on one street.
Right. Which wasn't what it wasn't what I pictured when we talked about that being in the comp plan.
And I certainly understand that. I mean, tonight we can't go change the comp plan, but I
Yeah, I
understand your
understand that.
comments about, is there a broader need for discussion on areas where there's agriculture of maybe having the middle ground of residential suburban R1? We could workshop that with council. We could bring those concerns back. I mean, that's not gonna satisfy tonight, but
Yeah.
going forward, is that something the Planning and Zoning Commission would like to do? We would wanna know that so we could facilitate that, and that's fine if that's the case. That doesn't solve tonight, but going forward, we could look to that. If that's a concern from the commission, or something you would at least wanna have those discussions about.
Okay. I would like us to have that discussion.
Okay.
I think it's expedient just to say it's R1 because we don't have any residential suburban, but I'm gonna go back again, we missed that in the comp plan. And I'm the first to admit that, I dropped the ball, on too many Zoom calls and I missed it, so.
And I said this at council, this was the same, advice then, was it'd be better for the city to deny it than apply a zoning that's just different from what you've designated in your comp plan.
Okay.
This is different than a request to, you know, amend a zone, you know, where it currently, you know, in the future at some point, we maybe have designated to be something that doesn't really exist today. This is different from, this is applying an initial zoning on annexation, and I just wouldn't recommend the city ever apply something that's different than what we have called it to be in our comprehensive plan and future land use map, just purely by the requirements of the Local Land Use Planning Act and our city code.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if it adds any value, but we've sat through so many of these meetings where we're looking at maps, planning the city. I don't know that I agree that we overlooked residential suburban. I don't, that doesn't mean I don't have empathy for wanting it or for people that want it, but, I mean, I'm looking at this beautiful colored plan that says future land use map, and as I understand all the work and I don't know, hundreds of thousands of hours the city put into this, it's not what was laid out as the future of Hayden. So again, at the risk of repeating myself, I don't think residential suburban is part of the plan. Whether it should be or not, I'm not gonna address, I'm just simply saying that I don't think it's overlooked. I think this was methodically thought through and made for what it is.
All right, anybody wanna make a motion? Approve, deny, these are all recommendations.
Yep.
In the case of, PZE, I'm gonna make a motion in the case of PZE -21-165 that we recommend to City Council for approval along with the 5 staff recommended conditions.
And there's a motion on the table, is there a second to the motion?
I second that.
Okay, Brandon has seconded it, is there any need to discuss the motion? Hearing none, Shannon, would you please call the roll?
Chair Brian Peterson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alan Davis.
Yes.
Commissioner Corey Anderson, absent. Commissioner Brandon Bemis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ben Prickett,
Yes.
Commissioner Sean Taylor,
No.
Commissioner Mary Howard. No. 4-2.
All 4 in favor, 2 opposed, so that motion will carry. Okay, we'll move on then to the Community Development Director's report.
Let me shift gears. I don't have an agenda in front of me because my computer doesn't have internet. I don't know what it says.
It says Community Development Director's report.
Awesome. So I know that Shannon has been in conversation with the commission because Labor Day weekend falls on the first Monday of the month. And so we were looking for a second meeting night in September. I'm not sure if we have a quorum. We have a quorum for the September 13th date. We've been workshopping the mixed-use design standards with the city council, and we went back to them at their last meeting to try to firm up some kind of areas that they were concerned about, and so we believe that we're at a place where we can bring that code forward. And then we have a conditional use permit that'll come forward that same night as that zone text amendment.
Donna, before you, we get off that, is it mixed residential?
Mixed use.
Mixed use in front of council? Did they give direction, or they're gonna give direction, or?
They did give direction. We had a couple of questions that we kind of wanted to, firm up with them. The first one, obviously, was the base density to kind of start with, and they voted that they would move forward with a base density of 12 that could be incrementally increased up to a density of 15. Then that is a motion to approve that as a beginning place to bring that council amendment or that amendment, text amendment forward. And then we added some draft language that I'm trying to work the kinks out of, because it has some kinks still, but it talked about that non-residential component of a mixed-use building. Along the arterials, if that mixed-use building landed on an arterial, what kind of percentage that would be. Everybody was really pretty comfortable, planning, zoning, and city council were pretty comfortable with that 10%. But in application of that, what does that really mean? And so we added some draft language to the kind of concept that if a mixed-use building person with a developer of that mixed-use building, maybe it made more sense for however they developed their building to put that mixed use, that 10% of the ground floor requirement of commercial, maybe it made more sense to put it on the second floor if it met their design standards, but I didn't really feel like it was a staff way to kind of look at that. So if they moved that non-residential component anywhere other than the ground floor, it had to come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission in a public meeting to kind of look at those, making sure it met the intent of where we were going with the mixed use design standards. standards as a whole, because I just wanted some additional kind of view on that.
Is that 12 to 15, is that also something that would have to meet specific requirements? Or
Yes,
okay, so
similar to what it was, exactly the way it was before.
So it wouldn't be a planning and zoning or?
No, it would just meet the requirements. We also, kind of after planning and zoning, we looked at our commercial corridor a bit and added some language in the mixed use design standards to kind of address those properties like the apartments that are over here north of the city that sit back as a secondary lot. And acknowledge the fact that if they really only had a shoestring out to their public road, but they were a secondary lot, if they had some additional landscaping, they could get some additional density bonuses in there. Ultimately, anyway, looked at it, they could only get to 15. So ultimately that 20 number that's in the code today, should this text amendment be approved, would be reduced to 50. What else did we add in there? Was that about it? We broke up mixed use. We created a mixed use 1 and a mixed use 2. Kind of created the differences between under 5 acres and over 5 acres. It was kind of an interesting awareness of where really your smaller lots are really at and how many of those may or may not develop in any way, shape, or form as multifamily because you can't get your lot dimensions to work predominantly. Yeah, I think that's about it. So those, we workshopped with council, so we'll bring those back forward, those changes forward on the 13th for public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then bring those back to City Council in a public meeting.
Roughly when will that public hearing before us be?
September 13th.
September
It's
13th.
coming.
Not even roughly, yeah. Okay.
That is the reason, yeah.
All right, very good.
And then we do have a conditional use permit. Hayden Bible Church bought the Hayden Elementary, the old Hayden Elementary school site, and a church in the Central Business District requires a conditional use permit in order to operate, so.
Okay. Any questions or comments down there? And Alan? Barry?
No, my comments would be more towards that meeting, and I'll save it for that meeting.
So then only one more quick thing. We did meet with City Council. We had kind of a 4-pronged conversation about where we are with the comp plan and where we are with the zone map amendments. We got instruction from council to look at costs associated with noticing the 532 properties that exist as residential multifamily on the map today that don't own design standards for that zone. And so we'll be bringing that forward at the next council meeting and hopefully getting further direction as far as how to move forward, so.
Yeah, they're one on the 4th Tuesday of this month. I say that because council's meeting tomorrow for a quick meeting, but not at this meeting.
Okay. Brandon, any comments?
No.
All right, I would.
Good work, guys.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks, Brandon. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, consider us adjourned.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
And then,